In the heart of a bustling mountain town nestled along the winding curves of Highway 70, where the air carried the crisp bite of impending winter and the distant peaks loomed like silent guardians under a slate-gray sky, stood a modest diner called the Midnight Haven. It was the kind of place that time had gently overlooked, with its faded red booths cracked from years of loyal patrons sliding in and out, chrome-trimmed counters polished to a dull shine by countless elbows resting upon them, and a jukebox in the corner that still crooned tunes from the 1950s if you fed it a quarter. The neon sign outside flickered intermittently, casting a warm pink glow against the encroaching dusk, promising hot coffee and homemade pies to weary travelers seeking refuge from the road's relentless demands. Sarah Jenkins, the sole owner and operator of this humble establishment, wiped down the counter for the umpteenth time that evening, her calloused hands moving in rhythmic circles as if the motion could ward off the chill seeping through the thin window panes. At 42, Sarah had poured her life into the diner, inheriting it from her late father who had built it with his own hands after returning from the war, dreaming of a spot where folks could forget their troubles over a cup of joe. But dreams, like the steam rising from her last pot of soup, had a way of dissipating into thin air when bills piled up like untouched snowdrifts. She glanced at the foreclosure notice tucked under the register, its stark black ink declaring just 7 days until the bank claimed what was left of her legacy. $47, that was all she had scraped together from the day's meager tips, not enough for the mortgage payment, let alone the leaky roof or the ancient furnace that wheezed like an old smoker. Outside, the first flurries began to dance lazily in the headlights of passing semis, a harbinger of the storm forecasters had warned about all week, the kind that could bury the interstate under feet of white fury and strand even the hardiest souls. Sarah sighed, her breath fogging the glass as she peered into the gathering gloom, wondering if she should flip the sign to closed early tonight or hold out for one more miracle customer. Little did she know, the night was about to deliver not just shelter from the storm, but a whirlwind of gratitude that would rewrite the final chapters of her story in ways she could never have scripted herself. The wind howled louder now, rattling the door like an impatient guest, and in that moment, Sarah felt the weight of isolation pressing down, a solitary figure in a world that seemed determined to blow her away. Yet, deep in her bones, there lingered the unshakable spirit her father had instilled, the belief that kindness was the ultimate currency, one that banks couldn't foreclose on and storms couldn't wash away. As the snow thickened into a veil, obscuring the horizon, she straightened her apron, the yellow fabric a splash of defiant sunshine against the monochrome evening, and prepared to face whatever, or whoever, the tempest would usher through her door. Word count, 512, character count, 3012 including spaces. Paragraph 2. The storm descended with the ferocity of an uninvited reckoning, transforming the serene mountain pass into a chaotic ballet of swirling white and biting winds that clawed at the diner's walls like desperate fingers seeking entry. Visibility dropped to mere feet, taillights of abandoned vehicles glowing faintly like fireflies trapped in amber, while the highway patrol's urgent advisories crackled over Sarah's old radio, urging all non-essential traffic to seek shelter immediately. Inside the Midnight Haven, the fluorescent lights hummed softly, casting long shadows across the checkered floor. Tiles that bore the scuffs of 1,000 footsteps, each one a testament to the lives that had briefly intersected here over steaming mugs and greasy spoons. Sarah busied herself restocking the napkin holders and aligning the salt shakers with military precision, a futile attempt to impose order on the unraveling threads of her existence, her mind wandering to the what-ifs that haunted her quiet moments. What if she'd sold the place years ago when the offer came? What if she'd remarried after Tom left? What if the universe ever decided to throw her a lifeline instead of another anchor? The clock above the pie case ticked past 8, its hands mocking her dwindling hopes, when a low, guttural rumble pierced the gale, a sound not of thunder, but of engines, powerful and unyielding, cutting through the auditory chaos like a siren's call. It grew louder, multiplied, until it vibrated the very foundations of the building, sending a tremor up Sarah's spine as she froze, coffee pot in hand, mid-pour into an empty cup. Peering through the frosted window, she discerned shadowy forms emerging from the blizzard, 15 figures on roaring motorcycles, their leather-clad silhouettes materializing like apparitions from a fever dream, Harleys gleaming dully under the scant light, burdened with saddlebags and the weight of the road's toll. They were the Chrome Reapers, a motorcycle club whose reputation preceded them like exhaust fumes, tough, tattooed wanderers who lived by their own code, far from the polished boardrooms and manicured lawns of high society, yet tonight, they were just men, battered by the elements, seeking the simplest of mercies, a dry floor and a momentary pause from the fury. Sarah's heart pounded a staccato rhythm against her ribs, memories flashing of news clips portraying such groups as harbingers of havoc, but her father's voice echoed in her ears, a gentle rebuke to fear, judge not by the cut of the cloth, but by the need in the eyes. With a deep breath that tasted of resolve and regret, she unlatched the door, the bell tinkling like a hesitant welcome as the first rider, a burly man with a salt and pepper beard framing a face etched by sun and sorrow, stepped inside, snow cascading from his broad shoulders in crystalline avalanches. "Ma'am," he rumbled, his voice gravelly from disuse and diesel, "we're sorry to impose, but this beast out there's got us pinned. Any chance for a warm corner till it blows over?" And in that question hung the precipice of her decision, the fork in the road where compassion could either save her soul or seal her fate, as the rest of the pack filed in behind him, their boots thudding softly on the welcome mat, eyes scanning the space not with predation but with the quiet gratitude of the truly stranded. Word count: 528, character count: 3045 including spaces. Paragraph 3. As the Chrome Reapers settled into the diner's nooks and crannies, their presence transformed the empty space from an echoing tomb of solitude into an unlikely haven of boisterous camaraderie, the air thickening with the mingled scents of wet leather, motor oil, and the faint, acrid tang of chain-smoked cigarettes stubbed out hastily in deference to Sarah's no-smoking sign. They moved with a surprising gentleness, claiming booze with nods of thanks rather than demands, their vests emblazoned with skulls and pistons hanging like badges of honor on the coat hooks by the door, dripping meltwater into strategic puddles that Sarah mopped without complaint. The leader, whom they called Big Jake, a mountain of a man whose hands could palm a basketball with ease, slid onto a stool at the counter, his eyes, sharp as switchblades yet softened by the storm's humility, meeting Sarah's with an unspoken plea for understanding. "Names: Jake Harlan," he introduced himself, extending a palm calloused from wrenches and throttles, "and these sorry sons of the highway are my brothers. We've been ridin' from Reno, chasin' a charity run for vets, but Mother Nature had other plans." Sarah clasped his hand, feeling the residual warmth that defied the cold clinging to his skin, and mustered a smile that didn't quite reach the worry lines creasing her forehead. "Sarah Jenkins, proprietor of this fine establishment, or what's left of it," she replied with a wry chuckle, gesturing to the sparse shelves behind her where cans of beans and packets of instant gravy stood sentinel like reluctant soldiers. She set about brewing a fresh pot of coffee, the percolator gurgling like an old friend sharing secrets, its aroma weaving through the room and coaxing sighs of relief from the weary group. Stories began to unfurl like road maps unrolled on tabletops, tales of dusty deserts crossed under relentless suns, midnight breakdowns fixed by starlight, and the unbreakable bonds forged in the crucible of the open road, where loyalty was measured not in dollars but in miles logged side by side. One rider, a wiry veteran named Rico with a scar snaking across his jaw like a lightning bolt, recounted a close call in the Badlands, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper as the others leaned in, laughter erupting when he mimed the near-catastrophic swerve. Sarah listened from behind the counter, interjecting with questions that drew them out further, her innate curiosity bridging the chasm between her world of grease traps and gratuities and theirs of chrome dreams and rebel yells. As the night deepened, the storm's rage outside crescendoed into a symphony of howls and rattles, but within these walls, a fragile peace reigned, punctuated by the clink of mugs and the shuffle of cards in an impromptu poker game that pitted bluffs against bluster. It was in these shared silences, between hands dealt and sips savored, that Sarah glimpsed the